Hit it. Dun, dun, dun.
I'm leaving that in. So say you've got a certain amount of clean time, or maybe you prefer to use the term sober time. It doesn't matter. But say you have this time, could be a couple of months or several years. Then you find yourself under the doctor's care, let's say for a surgery of some sort, and they need to prescribe a pain management tool. You do your clean, sober thing, letting them know you're in recovery. They understand and do their best to get a non-narcotic solution. They find one, prescribe it, and it works great. After time, you leave their care in the hospital and go about your life no worse for wear. Everything handled by an over-the-counter solution. You leave with a clear conscience. It's pretty sweet. But what happens if the same doctor can't find an effective alternative? Or the alternative just isn't working and the pain is becoming detrimental to your post-op recovery? Basically, you're left with no choice but to be administered a narcotic. You finish your stay, you're given your prescription and go on your way. You finish a script and never look back. So you're all clear, right? Or did you relapse? Welcome to episode 16 of Two Drunks with a Mic, the podcast where we share our past so that others might have a future. Please make sure to subscribe and share. You know, it's been really cool to hear from a ton of people who are telling us that what we are doing has had a positive impact on their lives. So we thank you for being a part of that, and we invite you to continue on our journey as just addicts helping addicts. So, Randy, I know we touched on this question a little bit in past episodes, and for whatever reason, it's always hit the cutting room floor. We've never really kind of put it in, but is what I described up there, that person who has no choice but to take that narcotic, did they relapse? Should whoever this person is throw all their time away and take on the mental baggage that comes along with that over this? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, no, I don't think that's a relapse. If you're working a program and you have support and you get yourself into this predicament that you're going to need a narcotic and it's that severe of pain, I believe it's part of the healing process. It's part of it. And if your motives are right and you're working a spiritual program, I believe you're going to be safe. Now, if you're not, and you get into that predicament and you're kind of like slacking on your meetings or service work or your spiritual life, if you're not in a good place and you wound up there, it's still not a relapse. But I believe if you're not working, by the time you get out and they send you home with prescription of painkillers, and you're not sharing any of this with anybody, yes, you're gonna go back out.
You're starting down the road anyway, because what I'm hearing, because I agree with you, man. I think I may have mentioned this before, and like I said, most of the conversations we've had with this, with Luke on and stuff, we had to cut a whole bunch just to sort of make some kind of succinct program out of what we babble on about. But one of the things I know I shared before is I was in a meeting, a big meeting, one of the really good, strong AA meetings, as a matter of fact, down in Santa Barbara. There was a guy came in. He had 4 years, I believe. Solid dude. I mean, the guy was just salt of the earth. He was working an honest program, had some sponsees, but he had injured his back in an emergency. It was an emergency situation. He had been injured. He was out of town, got thrown in the hospital. They had to do some surgery. They jammed him full of some stuff. And he never really had the chance to defend, his recovery. Well, after the fact, he found out that they had given him, I don't know if it was some sort of morphine or whatever it was. And He was in excruciating pain. He followed everything to the prescription. And once he was finished with it, he never went back. But he still felt that he had just trashed all of his 4 years or whatever it was of clean time, and basically, came out at the meeting just saying, man, I got to take a newcomer chip because this is what happened. Now, at the time, it was interesting to see the way that these old timers and everybody were reacting to him, because number one, they were respectful to him because they're just kind of like, oh man, that really sucks. This could happen to anybody. But the amount of overwhelming support that came to him and saying, no, man, you didn't lose anything. The time you have is too expensive, man. And the fact that you're here and to whatever ends you're trying to accomplish at this meeting, we're here for you, man. And we're telling you, you did not go out.
Well, I can understand where he was at, Ian, because even though he didn't intentionally do this, and he knows that, but when you start putting narcotics or alcohol, any kind of drug in an addict's body, man, it starts to work on the mind, the mental part, okay? Yeah, he's taking it as prescribed, but you know what? He really likes the feeling. You can't deny that.
No.
You know what I'm saying? But you have to, that's what, I'm glad that you brought this up, Ian, because that's a sticky situation, man. But I really, like the guy that came back in the rooms, he probably just felt, I don't know, man, but he didn't. I don't believe I think threw it all away, man.
No, but I think because the key is like you said right at the beginning, it's what's your motivation, man? It's like well, okay. You always hear, for instance, going back to the last episode where Luke was on, episode 15 or 14. Okay. Mm-hmm. Toward the end, and I think it probably got cut too, but you were talking about, hey man, as soon as I sell this business, my plan is to go back up north, maybe travel around a little bit. Basically, don't like any kind of grass growing under you at all. And you and me, we're cut from the same cloth that way. We traveled for work. That's how we made our living, and so we got really comfortable on the road, and we like that aspect of it. I even said in that episode that it was a big part of my selfishness in my alcoholism to move. Oh man, I burnt some bridges here. I'll just move down the road. Nobody will know me, and it didn't happen often, but it was in my mind where it almost allowed me to justify the way that I was, saying, screw it, man. If they don't like me, I can just move down the road.
Yeah.
So I think what we got out of that episode was, I don't think the fact that you liking to move around has anything to do with an addiction, whereas mine would. Now I'm a homebody, man. I love to just stay at home and stay in one place. I want the grass to come up around me. I feel safe like that. But that doesn't mean, I won't travel, because what we established in that, it comes down to our motivation. Are you running from something? Are you running from something that's gunning for you, man? Something you're hiding.
Yeah.
And,
well, yeah. I mean, it's a great point. I guess that I've searched all my life to find the perfect life, and I know you can relate. So I'm constantly looking for what God's will for me is. I pray about it a lot, and it's in my blood, man. I am a traveler, man. I enjoy. I shouldn't say that. I appreciate this country, man. I appreciate the little things along the way, trees, mountains, what have you. I appreciate a lot of stuff, that little things, man, like hearing the birds in the morning. Like a lot of people are not there, man. So it's part of my spirituality, Ian, and you being a homebody. It sounds to me that it's right in your home, man. Your home life is it sounds like it's very good, man. And that's not really the case. It's getting better for me, but I've gone through some marriage counseling in the last month, and So, but it, maybe that's part of it. I don't know. I've always wanted, because I grew up in an alcoholic home, I've always wanted a stable environment and for my kids and, but, I guess it is a little bit selfish, but, Ian, since we met, I've been at it pretty hard as far as, my career, and I don't feel like I've had a break in such a long time. So yeah, when I travel the road this time around, it's going to be seeing friends like yourself and Matt down in Louisiana and start working my way back up. And then I've got some amends to make as well along the way, in Vegas. So that's part of the plan too, but getting back to, the situation that your friend had, with the prescription, I'd like to really hear some other opinions on that. I'm starting to see this with this cannabis out. Like everybody seems to think that stuff is just good for you. With the CBD oil and this, that, and the other. Right. I don't know, man. I've never been a big pothead, man, but I guess I did enjoy it back in the. I was never. I used to do it at night, man. I remember when I used to work real hard, and if I wasn't drinking, man, I'd smoke a little bit of pot at night, and it would help me sleep. But these days, man, I don't know. I hear that it's helping a lot of heroin addicts that are trying to get clean, and now that they've got such access to that, and I don't know. It's a different time now. I don't want to sound like, hey, it's okay to smoke pot and go to AA or whatever you're doing, But like you said, your motivation, what are you doing? Like, where were you at, man, in your head? Like, right. What's going through your mind? Okay. That's to thy own self be true. Ian, you and I talked about that the other day. We can't BS ourselves anymore, man. We used to be able to we did it for years, justifying everything, just, having an excuse for everything. But today, it doesn't sit right with us, man. We can't live a spiritual life at the same time and then BSing ourselves. You know what I'm saying? So
right, and I get what you're saying, and you're right, man. The landscape of the culture is different. Here we are, 18 years in a war, and 18 years in that war is flooding damaged veterans back into society, man. And this is to no fault of their own. They've got to find some way to cope, some way to deal with PTSD, some way to deal with chronic pain and all of these types of things. And unfortunately, I think what happens is, from what I've seen, is a lot of these dudes that they'll go down the road of the opiate. They'll turn into junkies and things like that. Probably never intended to be in their life. But like we've established before on this with our personal experience with those opiates, you don't have to be an addict to get hooked on those. They'll turn you into that.
Yeah.
They'll turn you into a junkie, man. And you hear about a lot of this stuff that comes out in the news about big pharma and the scandals and things like that. And they're just scumbags, man. When it comes to that stuff. But not to go down that trail, but I just wanted to back up a second and completely sympathize with these vets, man. I'm a veteran. Mm-hmm. I carry that bag. I carry that baggage around, man.
Yeah, I know.
And have for a lot of years. And I think that had a lot to do with drinking for me. And there's still demons that I need to deal with from time to time through that. Now for me personally, do I feel like I need to be on any kind of medication? No, I've never been diagnosed with PTSD. I've also never been tested for it. It's just one of those things. I don't have a lot of fondness for the VA, and I don't want to get into something in my life. I don't want to invite that stress of trying to deal with a VA in my life. They're worthless, I know they can do some good for some people, but man, I don't know. I'm going totally off track there, man. Cause it riles me up. But my point is that when, I think about these poor guys and gals, they're coming over amputees and all of this stuff. they've got to have something, man. And if CBD oil or whatever it is out there and can be a good tool for them, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, I guess, the first step is your life unmanageable. If these guys can do this, and it helps them, and they're not doing what we did when we were out there, and I think it's fine.
Get something into their hands to begin with that's not going to turn them into, people like we used to be.
Yeah, that's, my heart goes
that might
out
be a
to
harsh way to put it.
But combat fighters, man, coming back and feeling like they are not welcomed or something. It's beyond my imagination, man. But there's a lot of, in this world today, Ian, these mental illness is skyrocketing, and I'm sure it has a lot to do with maybe technology and how fast we can get information. I just don't think we evolved into that quite yet, Ian. I just don't think it's healthy for us, what's going on. And I think everybody in this world is starting to feel enclosed, man. So you're seeing panic disorders going through the roof. I don't know, man. There's something going on. A lot of people have said this, and there is something going on, man. And we just don't know what it is. And we're gonna know. We're going to understand here before long.
There's people a lot smarter than us out there that can't even get it really figured out. But one thing I can tell you though, since you did bring up mental health concerns, is that from my studies in recovery, through school and stuff, mental health is a big concern. And it's kind of one of those, which came first, the chicken or the egg in a lot of cases. They don't know if alcoholism causes schizophrenia, or if schizophrenia is a symptom or the cause of somebody wanting to drink to the point of becoming alcoholic. But one of the good turns they're taking in the system is that they are trying to diagnose and treat people separately. Meaning that if somebody does come in and they have a co-occurring disorder, the system is moving to the best they can identify any sort of mental health concerns that are perhaps a person's dealing with, get them treated, and then start dealing with their addiction. Mm-hmm. When I was in the program, when I was there at the Santa Barbara Rescue Mission, like I mentioned before, there were several people in there that were, at the time they called it dual diagnosis. Now it's referred to more as like co-occurring disorders. But they were dual diagnosed. And there was one particular guy, and I know I mentioned him before, but he was telling me, oh man, I'm this and I'm this. And at the time I thought that he was just giving me excuses, but really what he was doing was he was trying to educate me. And I appreciate that at that time. But to their credit, to the rescue mission's credit, they were able to get him the help that he needed for his mental health concerns, separate from his addiction concerns. They were only there to treat him for his addiction. They sent him up to county health or wherever it was to get what he needed for his mental health. And I thought that was really cool. And so when it comes to some of that stuff, I mean, it is, dude, yeah, way too deep for me to understand, but certainly out there.
Ian, this is happening to kids, and this is probably the part that has a lot to do with the social media. But doctors these days are almost like I thought I read it somewhere that the one doctor prescribed this kid to go walk in the park 3 days a week over where he lived, and that, I mean, he got a bunch of flack for that, but it's so true.
Yeah, he got a bunch of flack for it because there's no money in it, exactly. Or he could have what he could have done is just given the poor kid a bunch of Adderall and sent him home. And man, I got to tell you guys this, man, because this is a true story. As you know, a couple weeks ago, I went to one of the graduation ceremonies that the Santa Barbara Rescue Mission has for their group of men and women graduates as they come through the program. There's not a lot of them. I think that total graduates, there's about 16 of them. And from each group, from the men and the women, they have a a speaker. Like everybody gets up and kind of gives their little testimony, but then they want kind of hold this one person out. And the lady came up, dude, I'll see if I can link a YouTube video in the show notes to this. You have got to hear this story that gal told. Dude, I'm not even going to try to describe it because it was one of the craziest things I've ever heard. Her journey and, you know, really the testimony to where God had brought her today. It was just so amazing. But the gentleman that spoke, I'll see if they've have those up yet, and I'll link those too. This gentleman that spoke was born into an addicted situation. He was born addicted. Okay. He was born addicted to heroin and some other things, I believe. He was removed from that situation, placed into foster care at a very young age, at like, I want to say just a couple months old, was adopted by a relatively affluent family, loving, kind, everything that anybody could hope for. But which one thing that's common with children that are born addicted is that certain things manifest a little bit later. So when he started school, he started having what some doctors would consider a behavior issue. So they put him on Adderall. And he was young. I want to say at this point he is 7. I could be. He was young. Okay. And how it worked, according to him, he'd get up in the morning, he'd eat his breakfast. His mother would rightly, you know, just dispense whatever the dose was to him, and he'd go off to school. He said eventually what he noticed, even in his young mind, is that when he got to school, he was feeling really good. Okay. I think he had some anxiety issues or something, social issues, but he started feeling really good and he was able to be more outgoing and all of this. So then as time progressed, it went from, so the pattern had been breakfast, pill, school. Eventually he'd come out and he would demand his pill first, then he'd eat some breakfast and then school. Then it went from pill, no eating, school. He said where it got kind of scary was when summertime came around, he didn't need the pill anymore because he wasn't going to school. His parents didn't give it to him. He said he totally withdrew. I mean, it's just like withdrawing from meth.
Oh, wow.
You know, and here's this poor little kid.
Yeah,
so
how old was he at that point?
I want to say it started when he was young, man. I want to say 7, 8. It was definitely an elementary school. Okay. So then, you know, but get this. So the poor kid, goes through junior high, gets into high school, and he is introduced to drinking and some other drugs. And there was something that happened at that point where his body recognized what was that correlation from all those years before to where he was then and that experience, dude. And the guy turned into a full-blown junkie at that point, you know. But it was really, to hear him speak about it is really sad, but very encouraging too, because, you know, he had died once or twice, I think. Had some other issues, got like a systemic blood infection that almost killed him. I mean, the guy shouldn't be alive. Which is the story of many of us, but, you know, by God's grace, he was alive and giving his testimony at this thing. It was super encouraging. But my point is, we need to watch what we put into our kids, and not just listen to some doctor that's, you know, wanting to pile a little bit more in the kitty, you know.
I mean, I'd say the last 10 years, they might have cracked down on it by now. Maybe not as much as they're cracking down on painkillers, but the last 10 years, Ian, you hear a lot of kids are being, prescribed the Adderall thing. And you don't really know, I don't know what type of test that I don't think all these kids really need that type of medication. It's what I'm seeing. I just don't think that's the route. I think that kids are kids. And it's, Ian, I mean, I had a hard time sitting still in class. I mean, come on. I mean,
Yeah, but, back then, man, in the 70s, and, I grew up through the 70s and 80s and graduated from high school in 87, or should have graduated. I had to get my GED because I got kicked out of high school because I was just a turd, man. But
yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, Ian.
But my point is, man, dude, you mess up, you're going to hear from it, man, from your parents. Yeah. Parenting's different. Now they got us all scared and everything. It's like, oh, whatever. But at any rate, man, we're not parenting, obviously not parenting experts.
Well, Ian, there's hope. You've said this from time and time again. For all these individuals that have gone through what you're speaking about, there's hope, man.
Absolutely.
There's definitely hope in this. Pray to God, turn your life over, man. Ian, we were talking, at the beginning of this episode, about these situations that people are getting into. And, as long as you have a spiritual life, and it says in that book, man, that it's a must. Yeah, I think it's a must for everybody. I really don't, whether addict, alcoholic, or not. I don't know how people can get through without a higher power. I just, in today's world, but right. Anyhow, well, you stay out of yourself and stay in the solution and do for others. That concept is a little like, but if you just practice that, you'll see what happens. Okay. First you think, well, why, but start doing for others, man. All of a sudden you're going to develop this compassion for others. Okay. And then your heart's going to change. You're not going to feel so bitter. And all those things, those gifts that come along the way when we stay out of ourselves,
right?
And about the guy that was, if you're doing all those things, the guy that was in the hospital, came out and got the prescription. Hey, you know what? And he's not doing it. It's a freebie, man. Don't beat yourself up, man. You're not, going on the streets. Get right with your support group. Pray to God. You're right with God, dude. You're okay, man.
Yeah. Right. And Randy, last episode, I read chapter 3 from the big book. And the reason I did that was because we talk a lot about surrender. We talk a lot about that insanity, the insanity that comes along with alcoholism. But one thing that I said at the beginning of the episode was, and I believe it to be accurate, and I believe that it would work, is if as you're reading that, you could replace alcoholism or any mention of alcohol with anything you struggle with in your life. So this is why you and I have a lot of conversations about whether it's okay to be an addict in AA or an alcoholic in NA or whatever. The bottom line is an addict's an addict and alcohol's a drug. So don't get wrapped up in the semantics of whatever fellowship you're in. If you're running an honest type program, and you happen to be a heroin addict, dude, I know more addicts, more true, like what people would consider drug addicts in AA. I know more of them in AA than I know guys that go to NA. And it's a personality thing, I think, for them.
Well, here's the thing. Another thing that I think a lot of, Luke was telling me just the other day, quit being in the problem, man. Quit and stay and get in the solution. Okay. And a lot of people are trying to pick apart things. I've done that, man. It didn't get me anywhere, trying to like get all egotistical about, my way of programming.
Oh yeah.
But, it just crushes my spirit, man. I've become negative, but yeah, they're going after the problem all the time.
Right.
I don't, let's stay in the solution, man.
Right. Absolutely, man. Because, and I'd say this, because this is how I was taught in recovery. For me, relapse isn't an event. It's a process. Okay. And I see that recovery is also a process. Now, I don't want to scare people and think like, oh man, you're gonna relapse. You're gonna relapse. I think that's garbage. I don't think that relapse is a part of recovery. not the right program, not a good, honest, solid program. It's not. You should be able to, like we've established, start working that program and start getting your life back.
Yeah.
You know, and that was what a point that Luke brought up. That's what pushed me back out in the world. I wanted to see if what I was learning and what I was applying into my life would work. And if it didn't, I was still in a safe spot. I could get back, get the education I needed, get the support I needed. But I built support into my life, with accountability and things like that. But another very important thing that came up and the importance of staying connected in some way to a program, whether you got to go to meetings or whatever it is a story in chapter 3 about the guy who was a problem drinker, had realized that he was never going to be successful in business if he was a drinker, and he stopped drinking and never touched a drop until he retired 25 years later. Okay. And then he figured, well, at that point, I've earned this. So he put his, it says here, out came his house slippers and a bottle, and he was dead in 4 years. It's because like they said, he wrongly thought, like many alcoholics think, or many addicts think, that, well, I've gone X number of years without drinking because of me. They're not giving credit where credit's due. And then they said, well, I've earned it. Well, guess what, man? Like you told me the other day about myself, and I've mentioned this, man. I can't have alcohol in my body.
Yeah.
It'll destroy me, man. And it has nothing to do with me wanting it. It's just the way my body reacts to it. And it takes over. But
did you have that reaction when you first started drinking? Because you didn't know much about alcoholism when you first picked up and started partying with the friends after, in high school or what have you. Well, when you first started drinking, did you feel like, wow, you couldn't control it? Or were you able to have a couple of drinks?
Okay. When I first started drinking, junior high, I drank for fun, right? So, and generally you're limited on what you can get at that age. So whether you had a 4-pack of wine coolers, and you're sharing them with your friends, you just drank until they were gone. Later, as I got into the liquor, I was a big bourbon drinker for a long time. Jim Beam was my thing, and there was never any shortage of that around. I liked to have fun doing it. And if my friends were drinking with me, I generally would try to drink as much or more as my friends. So I think I was compelled by that means. It wasn't until, like I've said, much later that it was just me and the alcohol. It was just me and the bottle. But that same compulsion to drink came from that. Yeah, I couldn't stop. And the times I tried, and detoxed. And then once I detoxed once or twice, that was so scary that once I started drinking again, I figured, man, I got to ride this out. Knowing full well, man, where it was leading, but I got to ride this out because detoxing was scarier to me than anything else. So there was definitely a lot of change in my drinking over the years, but I think that I liked it, man. I like to drink.
You said you came up in the 70s. You're a little bit older than me, but not by much. But I came up in the 80s, and the whole sex, drugs, and rock and roll was out, still to this day. And
I know you got that Cinderella shirt on right now. I can see it.
Yeah, he's kidding. But I've always been so attracted to that, man. It was, I found me there. You see, that was where I felt right. If you know what I mean. If you were like me when you were younger, Ian, I didn't feel right.
Right.
You see, I don't know about you, but I didn't feel like I fit in, and a lot of fights and just but yeah, man, it's always a party at first, and we're just the type of guys that will take it further, and further and further. And then, you start going through like everybody else is passing out and you're the only one staying up drinking all night, you start going through those things and then people start telling you or they start talking about you drinking and then you wind up in the county jail or this, that, and the other. I don't know about you, Ian, but those were secrets, man, in my drinking career. If I wound up in the county jail over the weekend, I wasn't one of those guys that came out all egotistical, man. It was a secret, man. I kept that on the down low. They asked where I was at. I said, I had to take a little vacation. I don't know what I came up with, but that stuff is, man, that doesn't make it's just, but anyhow.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a mess, Ian. It was
No, I know. But I think for me, man, what I want to get at with this question and with this discussion is that early in recovery, especially, a lot of people, they're unsure at that point. Hey, and real quick, man, before I forget, one of our listeners, Matt, dude, so today he's got 92 days, man. So I just wanted to give him a shout out. So it's pretty sweet, man, that he's got, he contacted me yesterday, 91. So he's 92 days.
Sweet,
today.
Man.
So by the time this comes out, he'll have 93 days tomorrow, man. So we're really proud of you, Matt.
Man. There you go, Matt. Congratulations, man. Keep on with the keeping on.
Yeah, keep it up. But what I wanted to get at, though, is this question of whether or not you could do that and still maintain your sobriety. Man, I'm going to say this again. Whatever time you have in your recovery or sobriety, whatever you want to call it, it's expensive. It's a hard road. It costs you in an honest program. It's uncomfortable. It is a difficult type of thing to pull off successfully in a lot of ways, but it's so worth it, man. So when you get there, like Randy said, you're running a tight program, an honest program. You got a freebie, man. Don't go, beating yourself up saying, well, I was out cold and they pumped some morphine into my line, so I relapsed. Oh, man, you don't need that. You don't need to beat yourself up over that, man.
I disagree with that. That's not right, man. You cause somebody to jump off a building, man. You gotta, You
mean you disagree with? You're not disagreeing with me. You're disagreeing with.
No, I disagree that they think that he relapsed. That's not right.
Right.
That's not right, man. Like I said before, I was out in Vegas. There was a guy that he legitimately relapsed, but he was up on top of one of those buildings out there in Vegas, and he called me, man. He's like, man, and he wasn't kidding. I knew he wasn't. He was ready to jump off, man, and I had to calm him down and let him know, dude, come on, man. You got a whole life ahead of you. Get back on track. You'll be fine, man. Just hang on. But yeah, I don't know about you, Ian. I relapsed a few times early on. Luke, my brother Luke was famous for that, man. He did that for years. Some people they gotta dance with the devil a little bit more. To get that beat down, man. That 800-pound gorilla, man. You don't say when you're done dancing, okay?
No.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, man. Would you consider, okay, so let's just say relapse. Let's just take that word for a minute. Would you think that, so my experience is I quit. I just stopped drinking. Remember that time I told you about? I stopped drinking for 10 months.
Yeah, island time.
And went back to drinking. People say, you ever relapse? I'm like, I don't know. Not since I've been in recovery. No. But this start-stop thing, I don't know if I can count that as a relapse or have any experience with that. Because one thing I can tell you at that time is that 10 months, that was all just self-will, white-knuckling at times, no support, no spiritual life.
That's pretty amazing. I couldn't do that.
Well, I'll tell you what.
That's serious willpower. Yeah, you did some other things.
Yeah, but I was scared.
You went to a different place and some other things.
Yeah, but the whole geographical thing, man, that's a whole other topic. I'll move around and dude, your problems follow you because your problems are between your ears, man. They ain't in the geography. They ain't in the lay of the land. You know, they're in your head, but you know, yeah, I don't know, man. It's just it's something that I see come up, and it just bugs me, rubs me the wrong way that people are getting the wrong message out there about this. You know, like I said before, man, our job in recovery as recovering addicts, recovering alcoholics, whatever term you want to lay on it, part of that 12th step, okay, or the 12th step is carrying the message to others who are suffering and bringing them the message of hope, okay, to paraphrase it. And it doesn't anywhere in there say, as a matter of fact, in chapter 3, he's like, we don't class anybody as alcoholic. That's a self-determination. That is something that they have to determine. But here are the markers for it. Do this experiment or get this figured out. And I say that because on the flip side of that, who are we to regulate what, you know, short of holding people accountable? Say I have a sponsee, you know, and we're working together. Yeah, that's a different type of relationship. Hopefully that person's, you know, got a good head on their shoulders and is running a tight program. But you know what? That sponsor, that's part of his responsibility too, is making sure it goes both ways, man.
Yeah.
So, but again, just to say, man, hearing this, oh man, yeah, if you do this, you relapse or that's not okay. Man, I'll tell you what, if a brother or sister's out there and they spent 2-3 years over there in Iraq or Afghanistan or one of these places, and they got to smoke a little weed to keep themselves where they need to be physically, so be it. Are you
talking about maybe somebody with an alcoholic that's able to smoke weed? Or, I mean, what's the point? I mean, yeah, I mean,
I'm just
say the combat is a recovering alcoholic.
So I'll say this.
What if he can smoke a little bit of pot at night and stay away from the alcohol?
Yeah.
What if he successfully can do that? I don't know.
I don't see
or not. But what if there is a guy out there? I'm not going to judge him.
No.
You know,
who are we to say? Who are we to right? Who are we to say? That's exactly my point, man. So it's like, hey, you know what, man? That's between that guy and whatever else he's got going on in his life and in his program.
Exactly. So maybe,
but he does have to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, but that they do have to understand that if it does become a problem, something else is going to have to change. Is going to have to be made.
Yeah,
you know, and I think
I don't know, like you said, like if he's toking it up at like 8 p.m., 9 p.m. before he goes to bed, and you know, and it helps it. I don't know, man, but maybe that guilt and remorse is the big part of it. Is going back into the rooms and getting a new chip. Maybe that's why they're getting all beat up, man. Yeah. And they gotta like hear from everybody, like you started back over, and gonna have to go through this once again. And what's the deal here? You know, I don't know. I mean.
Or you take somebody, Randy, that's got cancer. Okay. They've been in the program for 10 years. They get diagnosed with a cancer. They're going through this treatment. They got to take this cannabis. What, are you going to kick them out of the room?
Yeah, really, man.
No.
You can't be having that.
No,
dude.
man, because it comes down to, man, this person needs this. You know, they need this treatment. They didn't go down to the street corner and buy a dime bag, you know, and you hope they're not doing that. Okay.
Yeah,
you know, hopefully they're getting better stuff.
What do you prefer him to do? You know, get on some manufactured, pharma, some other stuff that's, you know, it sounds to me the CBD oil, Ian, is really helping with anxiety, I guess. I'm hearing some things about that. I don't know, man. It's just pharma pills just scare me, man. You just don't really know what's really in there. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So there's this other stuff, man. I think it's pronounced kratom or is K.
Yeah, I read about that, man.
This stuff is like
it helps. What is it? What's the biggest thing?
Well, I'm gonna say this.
I don't know.
Yeah. So from this one addiction recovery group on Facebook, this person posts this. Beware of this substance. PSA. Okay. Public service announcement. Kratom is a highly addictive drug. People, please do your research on this substance before using it to get clean. I learned the hard way back when it was newer. It gives you the same feeling as opiates unless you have a super tolerance. But I went through the withdrawals. They aren't fun, worse than coming off of Oxy cold turkey.
Ooh.
And they're posting this because they said that they saw a few members recommending it for withdrawals. And it works. They go on to say it works if you want to replace one drug for another. You know, and I'd only ever heard of this stuff, you know, through these groups and stuff, never really had given it too much thought. But again, you know, there's all this debate about Suboxone and a lot of these other things that are helping heroin addicts and things like that. And a lot of people, they're struggling to even get off that stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
I would think anything's better than heroin, man. If you could, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, why replace one for another?
Well, yeah, I that doesn't sound like a good thing.
No.
What you're talking about? What's it called again?
Well, that Kratom stuff.
Yeah,
the one I just read about.
Yeah, that doesn't sound. I read something that I can't remember if they were trying. Is it legal?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know, man. I saw that and I saved it because I wanted to do more research on it. I don't know a whole lot about it.
Yeah, it helps some other things. It's not just that. I think there's some other areas that it's really beneficial.
We'll do some research on that and get back. Discuss it a little bit. But Randy, listen, brother, as always, man, thank you for coming on, giving your 2 cents. Just such an important topic, man, and it keeps popping up. And you know how fired up I get on this stuff. I'm always blowing up your phone, text messages and things like this. But, I just don't want to see somebody out there, thinking that they're fighting the good fight and only to be told that they're not because of this.
Yeah,
man, I'll say to the person that's saying that, man, get over yourself, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. And to thy own self be true, man. Get with God, and you if you're right with God, that's it, man. Well,
that's the self-worth. That's a self-worth saving right there, man. Is that self that is right with God. I discussed that in that one episode, man. Mm-hmm. It's a battle.
It is. This is part of living our life as addicts, and we need support, man. We need to talk about things, and we need. It has to be a we thing. It's
Yeah.
You can't do this alone. If you're going in there and getting surgery and you don't have any support, man, you're gonna come out and But
yeah, hopefully things aren't always that drastic, but.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
We don't. I guess I don't want to make it sound like you got to fear, fear for your recovery and stuff, but you got to guard it and you got to be somewhat reasonably, realistic when it comes to things. Otherwise, you go down the road like that guy I mentioned in chapter 3, or the guy that wants to put whiskey in his milk, a few times during lunch, and next thing you know, he's in an asylum.
Yeah, how about the insanity of that, man? That the milk.
Yeah.
Classic.
Dude, that's hardcore, man.
Oh, man. That's been real, Ian.
All right,
appreciate
brother.
Your time, man.
All right.
Thank you.
We will we'll get back. Hopefully see Luke back on here. And I got some other people lined up too, man. You were asking me if it's been crazy around here. It really has. And what I'm trying to do is get a lot of these people lined out and set up. And I got contacted by that group the other day, and they want their doctors to come on because they've got something to say. I want to do a little more research on that. Yeah, I asked them for the academic studies on that, and they sent me a code. So I did
see that email that you did send back to them. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah. So they sent me a code for a free book. So I'm going to get that.
Yeah, that looks a little, that'd be interesting to hear that.
Yeah, it will be. It would be, and that's part of our platform here is we don't want to shut anybody down, but I also want to be responsible with whoever we bring on. So anyway, all right, everybody. All right. Hey,
God bless,
thanks.
Ian.
Yeah, you too, Randy. Hey, thanks everybody for listening, man. And we'll see you next time.